I worked overnights at a local convenience store. Not ideal, but it paid my rent and let me keep up with community college classes during the day. Most nights were pretty much the same. Same few regulars, that buzzing soda fridge, old country songs on the radio, and a moth or two trying to crash the party through the glass. The store sat on the edge of town, next to a mostly empty strip mall. Half the businesses had for lease signs in their windows. So after dark, my little store was like an island under harsh fluorescent lights, surrounded by black parking lot. It was late March, still cold enough at night that I kept my hoodie on over my uniform. Around 11 p.m., things usually slowed down. The truckers had already passed through for coffee, and the college kids looking for snacks had gone back to their dorms. That's when the quiet settled in, the kind where every noise seems too loud, and you start noticing the flicker of the security light outside, or the way the clock ticks just a little uneven. That night was one of those shifts where time seemed to crawl. I'd wiped down the counter twice, restocked the gum rack, and was halfway through organizing the cigarette shelves when I noticed movement in the corner of my eye. Through the wide front windows, I saw him. He was standing under the tall light post at the far edge of the lot, right where the pavement met the darker stretch of the strip mall. He wasn't smoking or looking at his phone, just leaning against the pole, hands in his jacket pockets. At first, I figured he was waiting for someone. We got the occasional late-night rideshare drop-off or pickup, though not usually this far from the main road. I kept working, looking up now and then, but every time I looked, he was in the same spot, head angled just slightly toward the store. 15 minutes went by, then 30. He didn't move. I told myself it wasn't my problem. Maybe he was meeting a friend. Maybe his car had broken down. Still, I kept checking. Not obviously, just quick looks whenever I passed the register. Something about the way he stayed so still made me uneasy. Around 1 a.m., a couple came in for sodas. While they browsed, I peeked outside again. The man was still there. The couple left without looking his way, and I wondered if I was imagining the sense that his attention kept coming back to the store. By 2 a.m., he had shifted slightly, no longer leaning, now just standing, his posture straighter. I could see more of his face in the light, though from that distance, it was just pale and expressionless. The store was empty again. The parking lot silent except for the faint buzz from the lights. I debated calling the non-emergency police line, but what would I even say? There's a guy, standing. That wasn't a crime. Around 3 a.m., I noticed something new. He had moved closer. Not much, maybe 20 feet, but enough that I was sure of it. The weird thing was, I never saw him walk. One moment he was under the pole, the next he was between it and the dumpster enclosure. I told myself maybe I'd missed it while counting change or restocking. Still, my chest felt tight in a way I couldn't shake. A delivery truck pulled in around 3:15 to drop off bread. I signed the form and the driver wheeled in the racks. When I looked back outside, the man was leaning against the light post again, like nothing had changed. The truck left and the lot was empty, except for him. When 4 a.m. finally rolled around, I was relieved. I grabbed my bag from under the counter, locked the register, and went to the back to clock out. I told myself not to be ridiculous. I'd walk straight to my car, get in, and go home. But the moment I stepped outside, the air felt heavier, like everything had gone still. I looked toward the light post. He wasn't there. I looked around the lot, my heart starting to race. and then I saw him. He was leaning against my car, not looking at me, not doing anything. Just there, head slightly bowed, one hand resting flat on the hood. I froze for half a second before calling out, "Hey, can I help you?" I didn't mean to sound so harsh, but it just came out that way. He didn't answer, didn't even move. I took a step back toward the store door, hand finding the keys in my pocket. "You need to back away from my car." Slowly, too slowly, he straightened up and stepped away from the hood. But instead of walking off, he stopped a few feet away, looking past me toward the store windows. Something about that look made my skin crawl. I got my key in the door, stepped back inside, and locked it behind me. My hands were shaking now. I grabbed the phone, but before I could dial, I saw movement through the glass. He was walking away, not toward the street, but along the row of darkened storefronts. The shadows swallowed him within seconds. I waited inside for nearly half an hour before finally heading to my car. The hood was warm where his hand had been. I drove home without looking in the rearview mirror, and the next night I parked right under the front windows. I never saw him again. But every time I worked late after that, I checked that light post. And sometimes, even when it was empty, I could swear I felt someone watching from just beyond the edge of the lot. I've been working nights at this little 24-hour gas station on the edge of Missoula for a few years now. It's chill. And honestly, after driving trucks for over a decade, the quiet of a stationary job suited me. The station's just off a service road near the interstate, enough traffic to keep the lights on, but most nights it's dead after midnight. Montana in October just feels extra still, like even the wind's being polite. The air gets crisp enough that you see your breath, but it's not full-on winter yet. On a clear night, you can hear the hum of the highway like a distant river, with a loud diesel engine breaking the monotony now and then. I actually liked it. Stocking shelves, sweeping the floors, and letting the clock crawl toward sunrise. It was one of those slow nights. Around 1 a.m., I was leaning on the counter, sipping lukewarm coffee and absent-mindedly watching an old Western playing on the tiny TV by the register. Not a soul had come in for at least 45 minutes. Then the door opened. A guy stepped in, mid to late 40s maybe. Tall, but with this slouched posture like he was trying to make himself smaller. He wore a worn Carhartt jacket, jeans stiff with dirt, and a black baseball cap pulled low. I remember the way he looked around the store before walking up. His eyes didn't land on anything for long. "Hey," he said, voice low. You mind helping me pump some gas? Got a buddy's car out back. Hasn't been moved in a couple days." That alone was odd. People don't usually ask for help pumping gas, and we sure as hell don't go around back to do it for them. Company policy. I asked him why his friend didn't just pull up to the pumps. He said he can't really walk too well. Been having a hard time getting around. Car ran out of gas on him a couple nights ago. Now that raised another flag. I'd been out back earlier taking out trash, hadn't noticed any cars parked there. And when a car sits for a couple days, it's not something you miss. Still, I didn't want to outright say no, so I told him I'd take a quick look. We stepped outside. The night air had that quiet bite to it, and I noticed right away that the back of the lot was darker than usual. One of the floodlights had gone out. I followed him along the side of the building, the ground loud with every boot step. As soon as we rounded the corner, I saw it. A dusty silver sedan, parked near the edge of the lot where the gravel met the weeds. No plates. Windows slightly fogged from the inside. It looked like it hadn't been touched in days. And that's when I noticed the shape. In the back seat, under a thin blanket, was what looked like a person lying down, perfectly still. I slowed my pace. "That your friend?" The man looked at the car, but didn't answer directly. "Yeah, he's resting, not feeling too good." I don't know, the way he said resting gave me a weird feeling. I've seen plenty of people sleeping in their cars, truck stops are full of them, but this felt different. I took a step closer to the car. The blanket was pulled tight over the figure, almost like they'd been wrapped up. There was no movement, no sound of breathing, no shifting, just stillness. The guy's tone changed. Quicker now. "So, you got one of those red gas cans? I can pay cash. Just need a gallon or two so we can get out of here." I told him we didn't have cans. He pressed a little, said he'd leave his ID, even his jacket. I could feel him watching me while I looked at the car. Then, from the other side of the lot, I heard something. Not from the car, off in the distance. A faint rustle in the weeds, followed by what sounded like a short cough or groan. The man's head turned sharply toward the sound, then back to me. His voice dropped even lower. "Don't worry about that. Just the wind." It wasn't the wind. I was starting to piece things together in my head. No plates. Car abandoned for days. Someone lying in the back, unmoving. A man showing up in the middle of the night asking me to help pump gas for it. I told him I needed to go back inside and check with my manager about policy. His face tensed up, just for a second, before he nodded. Walking back to the front, I kept my pace even, trying not to make it obvious that I wanted to put some distance between us. Once inside, I locked the door behind me and grabbed the phone. I called the non-emergency police line, told them exactly what I'd seen. A suspicious man, an abandoned car with no plates, a possible person in the back seat not moving. They said they'd send a unit to check it out. While I was on the phone, the man walked past the windows toward the front of the store. He tried the door, found it locked, stood there for a moment, staring in. Then he walked away toward the side of the building. For the next few minutes, I couldn't see him. I kept my eyes on the security monitors. The camera angle for the back lot is terrible, mostly shadows, but I caught glimpses of movement near the car. About 10 minutes later, 2 patrol cars pulled in. Lights off. The officers spoke to me first, then headed around back. I watched from inside as their flashlights swept over the gravel and onto the car. One of them opened the rear door. The blanket slid off. From where I stood, I couldn't see much detail, but I could tell right away the person inside wasn't sleeping. The officer's body language told the rest. He turned, said something into his radio, and the whole scene changed. Another cruiser showed up, then an ambulance. They kept me inside while they worked. Eventually, one of the officers came in to get my statement. He didn't give me much, just said the person in the car was in very bad shape and had been there for a while. As for the man who'd come into the store, they didn't find him. I finished my shift that night, but the building's noises were seriously messing with me. I kept replaying his face in my head, how calm he'd been at first, then how quickly he changed when I started asking questions. For weeks afterward, I found myself looking toward the back lot every time I stepped outside. The car was gone by the next afternoon, but in my mind, it's still there. parked in the shadows with that motionless shape in the back. And somewhere out there, the man who wanted me to help pump gas for it is still walking around. I work nights at a small gas station wedged between a highway on-ramp and an empty strip mall that never managed to fill 2 years in a row. Nights at the station were usually my kind of quiet. I'm not a morning person, and I hate heavy crowds, so the graveyard shift is kind of my comfort zone. The pay wasn't great, but I got to listen to music, sip coffee, and watch some random drunk stumble in looking for chips or cigarettes. That night in June started like any other. Humid, but with a breeze that kept the air from feeling too hot. I'd had a steady trickle of customers until about 1:30, mostly people heading home from bars. By the time it was pushing 2:45, the lot was empty and the road out front was dead quiet. Closing time for me wasn't really closing, since the pumps stayed locked and card only until morning. My main job after that was counting the register, locking the inside doors, and making sure everything was clean. Part of that routine was checking the bathrooms in the back before I clocked out. We only had one restroom, single stall, unisex, tucked in the far corner of the store past the stock room. It was nothing special. Linoleum floors that were always slightly discolored no matter how much you scrubbed, a single flickering fluorescent light overhead, and a fan in the ceiling that hummed just loud enough to be annoying. I grabbed the bathroom key from the hook by the register and headed back. My plan was to do a quick check, spray some cleaner, and get out. When I got to the door, I noticed it wasn't locked. That wasn't unusual. Sometimes customers forgot to latch it. But what stuck out was that the light inside was off. Normally, if someone forgot to lock it, they still left the light on. I pushed the door open a few inches, expecting an empty room. Instead, I saw the faint outline of a person standing in the far corner facing the wall. It took me a second to process what I was looking at. No movement, no sound. Just a figure about average height, arms at their sides. My first thought was that maybe it was a drunk who had wandered in and passed out standing up, if that was even possible. "Hey," I said, trying not to be so loud. "We're closed. You okay?" No answer. I reached for the light switch just inside the door, but before I could flip it, a voice, low, barely above a whisper, said, "Don't." I froze with my hand on the wall. It wasn't the kind of "don't" you say when you're joking or embarrassed. It was flat, serious. Something in my brain started telling me this wasn't just some drunk. "Look, man," I said, stepping back a little. "You can't be in here. We're closing up." Nothing. They didn't turn around, didn't shift their weight, didn't make any noise at all. The longer the silence dragged on, the more I noticed little details. The way they were standing, too rigid, like they were bracing against something. How their head was tilted slightly downward, not in a sleepy way, but like they were staring at something on the wall in front of them. I backed up into the stockroom, pulled the door halfway closed, and took out my phone. We didn't have security in the building, just me. So calling the cops felt like the only logical move. I explained the situation to dispatch. Guy in the bathroom, not responding, acting strange. They told me an officer would be there in a few minutes. While I waited, I stayed in the stockroom, keeping the bathroom door in my line of sight. I didn't hear any footsteps, no toilet flush, no sink running. Just that constant low hum from the ceiling fan. About 2 minutes later, the bathroom door creaked open. The guy stepped out slowly, still facing away from me, and walked down the hallway toward the front of the store. I caught a quick look at him under the dim light from the stockroom. A hoodie pulled up over his head, dark jeans, and work boots. His walk had this weird calm to it, like he knew no one would dare step in his way. I stayed put, letting him walk right past the register without a word. He didn't look at me, didn't look around, just kept going until he pushed the front door open and slipped outside into the dark. The weirdest part? I hadn't heard the front door open when I came back to check the bathroom earlier. He must have been in there the whole time. By the time the cops showed up, maybe 3 minutes later, the guy was long gone. I gave the officer a description, but I couldn't give much. Hoodie, jeans, boots. No clear view of his face. The officer checked the bathroom and didn't find anything unusual. No graffiti, no sign of drugs, no smell of alcohol. Nothing. When I asked him if I should be worried, he just shrugged and said, "Could have been someone looking for a place to crash for a bit. Still, keep the door locked from now on." I did exactly that after that night. But the thing that stuck with me wasn't him being in there. It's what I noticed the next morning when the day shift came in. I'd gone in to grab something from the back, and on the bathroom wall, right where the guy had been facing, there were fresh scratches in the paint. Not random marks, straight vertical lines, about a dozen of them, all the same length, like someone had dragged their fingernails or a tool down the wall over and over. The guy never came back. And I still don't know why he told me not to turn on the light. I've always been a night owl, but nothing could have prepared me for the kind of nights you get working alone at a rural gas station. I'm 24, living in Bakersfield, California, and I picked up this job for the extra cash while figuring out my next move. The pay wasn't great, but the hours fit, and most nights were boring enough to feel almost safe. This place sits off a quiet stretch of highway, the kind where cars come in waves. 20 minutes of nothing, then 3 vehicles at once. We've got 2 pumps, a tiny store, and one of those buzzing neon open signs that looks older than me. Inside there's a counter, some shelves of snacks, and a soda fridge, humming so loud it almost drowns out the silence. Most nights are uneventful. The occasional trucker grabs coffee or a couple of locals come in for beer. But one Thursday night in June, I had an encounter I can't stop thinking about. It was close to midnight when I saw her, walking up from the dark shoulder of the highway. At first, I thought maybe she'd broken down. She was mid-30s, maybe early 40s, wearing jeans and a faded hoodie. The hood was up, casting a shadow over her face, but I could still see her eyes glinting in the fluorescent light when she stepped inside. "Hey," she said softly, "would you mind if I just waited in here for a little while?" Her voice was calm but had this undercurrent of something uneasy. My first instinct was to say yes. After all, it's not like I get much company. But the request felt strange. People usually come in to buy something, then hang around if they need to. They don't start off with, "Let me wait inside." Is everything okay?" I asked. She hesitated, then said, "Yeah, just safer in here, I think." Safer. That word stuck with me. I told her we weren't really supposed to let people hang out unless they were customers, but she could grab something to drink and stay as long as she wanted. She nodded slowly, walked over to the cooler, and took out a bottle of water. I rang it up, and she paid in cash. The whole time, she kept looking toward the big glass windows at the front. Not in a casual way. More like she was checking if something was still out there. When I asked if she had a car nearby, she shook her head. Been walking a while. That was all she offered. After that, she sat at the small counter we keep for coffee and just stayed quiet. Every now and then, I'd hear her whisper something, but I could never quite make it out. I wanted to ask more, but something about her posture, tense, almost coiled, told me not to push. About 20 minutes later, a dark sedan slowed down as it passed the station. Not unusual for cars to roll by slow at night, but this one didn't keep going. It pulled into the lot and idled under the far streetlight. I could see the driver's silhouette, but the windows were tinted too dark to make out details. The woman's head snapped toward the window, and I swear her whole body stiffened. "That's him," she whispered. I froze. "Who?" She didn't answer. She just grabbed her bottle of water and moved farther back into the store, away from the glass. The sedan didn't move for a solid minute. Then, without ever pulling up to the pumps or the store, it rolled out of the lot and disappeared back down the highway. When I turned to ask her what that was about, she was already on her feet. "Thank you for letting me stay," she said quickly, then walked out the door before I could stop her. I stepped outside, watching her head in the opposite direction of the car. She didn't look back. After a few seconds, she was swallowed by the darkness beyond the streetlights. The rest of the night felt off. Every set of headlights that appeared in the distance made my stomach knot. I kept expecting that sedan to come back, but it never did. At least not while I was there. The next night, I couldn't stop thinking about her. Who was him? Why wouldn't she stay until morning? I even checked the local news for anything about a missing woman, but nothing came up. 2 nights later, she came back. Same hoodie, same slow walk up from the highway. But this time, she looked even more on edge. "Please," she said as soon as she stepped in, "can I just be here for a bit?" I didn't hesitate this time. I told her she could stay as long as she needed. We barely talked for the first half hour. She sat in the same spot by the coffee counter, hands wrapped tight around a cup she hadn't even sipped from. Then she broke the silence. "He followed me here last time." My skin prickled. "The guy in the sedan?" She nodded, eyes locked on the front window. "He's been following me for weeks. Not every night. Just enough to remind me." I wanted to ask why she didn't go to the police, but she answered before I could. "Already tried. They can't do anything until he actually does something. And by then," she trailed off. Around 1:30 a.m., a pair of headlights appeared in the distance. She tensed immediately. As the car drew closer, I recognized it. The same dark sedan. It pulled into the lot again, idling in the exact same spot as before. This time, I could feel my own pulse in my ears. I reached under the counter for the bat we keep back there, just in case. The driver door opened. A man stepped out, tall, wearing a baseball cap low over his face. He didn't head for the pumps. He didn't head for the store. He just stood there, staring through the glass at us. "Call the cops," she whispered. I grabbed the phone, dialing 911 while keeping my eyes on him. The moment I started speaking to the dispatcher, he turned, got back in the car, and drove off without a word. The police showed up 15 minutes later. By then, he was long gone. They took our statements, but admitted there wasn't much they could do. Without a license plate or evidence of a direct threat, it was just suspicious behavior. She left with the officers that night, but I could tell she didn't feel any safer. That was the last time I saw her in person. A week later, I found something taped to the glass door when I came in for my shift. It was a note written in hurried, uneven handwriting. "Thank you for not turning me away. He knows where I sleep now." No name. No return address. I stood there for a long time, staring at those words. The note felt heavier than paper should. For the next month, I kept getting the creeps whenever someone drove by the station too slow. Sometimes I'd catch my own reflection in the glass and expect to see someone else standing behind me. I still work there, but my routine has changed. I keep the doors locked after midnight, even though technically I'm not supposed to. And when I see headlights pause too long in the lot, I keep one hand near the phone. Because here's the thing. She walked into my life twice, and both times, she left the same way she came, into the dark. And whoever he was, I've got a bad feeling she's still looking over her shoulder. Tuesday nights were my favorite because they had a rhythm I could trust. By 11, the regulars were gone. Mr. Perez with his menthols, the nurse with her grape drink, the guy who always wanted to talk football. After that, it was just me, a faint playlist overhead, and the cooler's white noise behind me. My blue Corolla was parked under the brightest light, visible from the counter. That light threw clean, predictable shadows across the concrete. It was chilly for Tampa. I had my hoodie on under my uniform and had already locked the door and hung the bathroom key on its rotor hook. Everything was quiet. Then it got too quiet. The fridge cycled off. The hallway fan spun down. Then all of a sudden, the quiet felt tense. I looked up. Outside, leaning on my Corolla's hood, was a man. No phone, no cigarette, just leaning. Head turned just enough to make it seem like he was watching for something, or someone. I checked the side-angle camera. He wasn't looking at me. He was watching the street. Mid-30s, clean hat, gray zip-up, dusty jeans. His shoes looked newer than the rest of him. He stood like the car belonged to him. People don't lean on strangers' cars. I kept my keys in my hoodie pocket, fingers curling around them. The pumps were empty. The street was dead. The tire shop was closed. I thought about calling my manager, but he'd say to call non-emergency. And they'd probably say, he's just standing there. So I decided to handle it. I buzzed myself out. "Hey," I said flatly, "that's my car." He turned, smiled like I'd said something funny. "Your mom sent me." I laughed once. No, she didn't. "She called me, said you get off at midnight." I nodded toward the store. "She lives 3 states away. She's definitely asleep. She's worried about you walking alone, said you park under the big light." That was easy to guess. He didn't raise his voice, but the way he said it hit me hard, like it was proof. He acted like he was just adjusting his stance, casually blocking the driver's door. "What's her name?" I asked. He waved vaguely. "She knows your manager, said you'd be nervous." "I'm not," I lied, scanning my surroundings. "What's her name?" He didn't answer. Just looked toward the counter like hoping a manager wouldn't appear. "I've got places to be," he said, still smiling. "I'm not going to wait all night." "Then go," I replied. "You're on my car." He pushed off like I'd failed some test. Took a few steps toward me, slow, just closing distance. I stepped back into the doorframe, held it with my foot. "Call your mom," he said, lifting his phone. The screen showed Mom. But anyone can name a contact that. He didn't call. Just waited for me to believe it. I stepped back in and locked the deadbolt. That sound, the bolt sliding home, felt powerful. He paused at the window, then slowly walked toward the passenger side. I hit the key fob and the locks clicked. He watched the blink of my hazard lights. I think he wanted me to see him watching. I picked up the phone, called non-emergency. There's a man leaning on my car claiming my mom sent him. He's blocking my driver's side door. Is he trying to enter the store? No, he's trying to make me come out. We have a unit nearby, she said. Stay inside. A sedan rolled up to pump 3. A girl about my age. She saw me, saw him. I gave her a small wave. Please wait. She stayed in her car, watching, a witness. He pretended not to notice, walked around my car, peered into the windows, tapped the glass, then looked at me and mouthed something. Might have been, "You ready?" Doesn't matter. I read it that way. I texted my manager, man at my car claiming my mom sent him. I called the cops. He replied, "Good." The guy drifted to the front of my car again, placing his hip right where I'd have to squeeze through if I tried to bolt for the passenger side. He'd mapped it out. The girl at pump 3 cracked her window. "You good?" "Police are coming," I said, gesturing. She nodded. Her car stayed on, headlights aimed right at my bumper. He didn't like her watching. He moved, slowly, until his body blocked her line of sight to my door, then rested his hand on the roof like it belonged there. "Seriously," he said, "your mom asked me to get you. Don't make this weird." "What's her name?" I asked again. Nothing. He looked at the store sign like it might help. His other hand slid into his pocket. A rideshare SUV passed, slowed, then drove on. He watched it. I didn't move. Then the store phone rang. I answered, still watching him. Station. A quiet voice. "You ready?" Then a click. Caller ID. Blocked. I set the phone down. I didn't know if he called or someone else did. Either way, it matched. Too perfectly. A patrol car pulled into the lot, lights off. The officer stepped out. I recognized him. He buys coffee here. He didn't shout, just walked toward us like he was browsing snacks. The man lifted his hand slightly. Chill, friendly. The officer said something. The man gestured at my car, talking with his hands. The officer didn't look where he pointed, just watched his hands and then looked at me. I gave a single nod. They spoke quietly. I saw words like ride, mom, misunderstanding. The officer stayed firm. Trespass, her vehicle, leave. He laughed, shrugged, like he was being reasonable. Another cruiser pulled in. The first officer came to the door. I let him in. "You okay?" "Yes." I gave the short version. He nodded. "We'll issue a trespass. If he returns, call us." Outside, the second cop got the guy's name. He gave some story. They walked him to the edge of the lot. He didn't look back. The girl from pump 3 came in to pay. Her cash was balled in a fist. "You want me to hang out until you're in your car?" she asked. "Yes," I said. 2 minutes. We wrapped up. I locked the office. She stood watch. The cop walked me out and waited as I unlocked. I sat in the driver's seat with the fan blasting, just breathing. Then I drove home. Took a different route. Brighter streets, porches with lights, places that were yelling might get you help. When I got in, I texted my mom. We needed a code word. Something dumb, something only we'd know. And if anyone ever said they were with her, they'd have to say that word. And if they didn't, I'd never open the door. If you also thought the creepiest part wasn't the figure outside, but realizing you'd already walked past them earlier, smash that like button, subscribe so you never miss the next scare, and tell me in the comments how you'd handle a shift like this. And if you've ever thought, it's just a yard sale, what's the worst that could happen? You're about to find out. Click now to watch 4 disturbing yard sale horror stories. because you never really know what's hiding in plain sight. Stay alert, stay safe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.